Hi everyone. In today's presentation, we will be presenting the Ashley Madison case that was hacked. This is part of the cybercrime course that we are taking at Ontario Tech. The group members are, as you can see on the screen, is myself, Kamalpreet Malati, and Nirosh. The Ashley Madison side is an extramarital relationship site that's owned by Avid Life Media. It's a Toronto-based site, and their slogan, as you can see in the picture, was "Life is short, have an affair." Ashley Madison, at the time of the hack, it was revealed that they had 10 million users, almost 6 million men, and 12,000 active female users. Ashley Madison hack actually made global headlines. There were public figures, government officials, politicians, and many more users of this site. And Ashley Madison's site was collecting personal information, which was later released in the data dumps by the hackers. As we know, we are living in the information age. Your personal information is the new gold. The hacker exposed the site users' very secret and personal information, it leading to marriage breakups, resignation from public offices, and even suicide. And the shame and regret it brought to people trusting the companies like this with their personal or private information. The hack of Ashley Madison's site teaches us that our private information, once on the internet, they may never get deleted. So the Ashley Madison site was collecting these personal information, collected credit card information, and as well as obviously user activity information. The Ashley Madison site was hacked by a hacker or hackers. They call themselves the Impact Team. The demand Ashley Madison to bring down the site, as well as the other side, the Ashley Madison or Avid Media was operating, called Established Men. So the Ashley Madison, what the Impact Team was claiming is that they did not delete users' personal data even after people paid the fee. There was a fee required by Ashley Madison users to pay if they want their data to be deleted from their site. There were a total of 1.7 million collected from these users to get their data deleted from the site, but that seems to not happen. The other interesting thing that the Impact Team revealed was the Ashley Madison site was paying companies in Asia and Europe to create what they called it as Ashley Angels, and this was revealed in the data dump when the CEO emails were dumped. These were technically, the angels were fake women profiles sending robo mails. Yeah, and they were sometimes outsourced to these companies across the world to create these fake profiles. The data breach notice was discovered on July 2015 by Ashley Madison, like employees. And then uh, it did reveal that they did not delete personal information such as real names addresses of the users. We even paid them to do so. During the data dumps, it was found that 37 million user accounts that had names, street addresses, phone numbers, date of birth, relationship status, what they want, what they drink or smoke, etc., was collected and kept, and that was part of the data dump that the Impact Team revealed, as well as a 9.6 million credit card transaction between 2008 and 2015. Sorry, there's a typo. Including names, addresses, email addresses, and how much they paid was also dumped. Was part of the data dump. This is a timeline of Ashley Madison 2015 incidents or how the hack happened. So as you can see, July 12th, the Ashley Madison team finds a message from the Impact Team to shut down these two sites, Establishment Men and Ashley Madison. July 19, the Impact team publishes their warning message on the site. Also, setting a 30 days window for Avid Live Media, that this Toronto-based company who own Ashley Madison, to shut down the two sites. Furthermore, on July 20th, Avid Life Media issues two statements. One was to acknowledge the hack, that they say, yes, the hack actually happened. And the other one was saying that they are doing a joint investigation with law enforcement to find people behind this hack. July 22nd, the Impact team, probably to make their point or to say that they really have the data, they released the names and information of two Ashley Madison users who were probably part of at that time, or maybe they left the company being a user, but their data was not deleted. So they revealed two users part of a release. August 18, like they mentioned in July 19, they set a 30-day window to shut down the site. So August 18, they posted a data dump online. It is titled "Time is Up." That was a 10 GB data dump of the site's user email addresses. So on the same day, Avid Life Media issued another statement on the hack, detailing their investigation, and as well as like the first time confirming that the data dump is real. August 20th, like 2 days later, Impact team leaks a second major data dump, like 20 GBs of data, of internal data, which was mostly CU emails, the Ashley Madison website source code. The Ashley Angels were actually part of those emails that was in this data dump that explains how they create these fake women profiles and which companies and which countries. They listed a couple of countries in Asia and Europe that are outsourced to create these profiles. On August 21st, an interview with Vice, Impact team claims that they have over 300 GBs of hacked Ashley Madison data. So that shows the scale of how much data they were keeping. They were not deleting, and they were actually gathering a lot of data about their users. August 23rd, a third round of data leaks. Leaked data include a full list of government emails used in the for the accounts. So you can imagine some users actually use their work emails, like federal, provincial, government emails, to sign up for the site, and the amount they have spent on the site. August 24th, two Canadian law firms announced a joint 578 million class action lawsuit against Ashley Madison on behalf of all Canadians. And the same day, the Toronto police reported two sites following the dumps of the user data. And same day as well, the Ashley Madison announced a 500,000 bounty for any information on the Impact team. August 27th, Ashley Madison users face blackmail threats that was reported by journalists, like in the news. Probably people got access to those dumps, and finally people they know, or maybe they just was randomly targeting people to blackmail them. Finally, August 28th, Ashley Madison CEO resigns, stating it's in the best interest of the company and it allows us to continue to provide support to their members and dedicated employees. And later in the days, Ashley Madison actually said their users are growing, and it's the site is up, and they have more people coming to the site. So meaning that they were showing that nothing is affected, and people are still interested, and they are coming to the site. So that's an interesting timeline between July 12th and August 28th. All these three dumps and incidents happen, and investigations, and also the bounty and the class action lawsuit that comes with it, and also people unfortunately committed suicide. And there was probably very private secret information they didn't want other people to know. I will hand it to my other group members who will explain the technical aspects of this hack and the fingerprints and anything that was linked to this hack. Uh,
Hello everyone, this is Neeraj Kumar. Let's look into the technological approaches handled on Ashley Madison cyber attacks. So here, first, how did they hack the entire website and what is the hacking procedures that have been followed? Still anonymous, yeah. From the investigation team, still the people are taking down the technological approach has been followed on the hacking this entire website. So this hack been completely look like a scripted and brings them a Hollywood cinematic experience. That what the the articles are saying so far. So from the official side, 30 million user data has been released and the multiple websites downloaded and it's not able to erase so far, which is unerasable evidence so far it's happening right now in this case. So from the white hat sides, they found that the flaws in their system, if it's getting hacked before through cross-scripting hacking methods, but that was too late for the Madison people to react to the impacting. So it's moreover seems like this is an coordinated attack. So from the forensic analysis of the Ashley Madison hack, the first announcement was released to the AM employees says that the AM got hacked and the hacker demand to seize the entire company operations, but initially the AM parent company called Avid Life Media thinks that this is a false alarm from the fake hackers. But attackers made their words to true, yes, and they leaked the entire information about the Ashley Madison on the internet on August 18, 2015. It's happened, yeah. So as you can see, this image was displayed on the employee's screen when they open the computer, which means your system has been shut down. And the yeah, and the non-compliance will cost you the more, which means they will release all customers' records, profiles, and all the customers' secret sexual fantasies, and nude pictures and conversations and matching credits, cards, transactions, real names, addresses, and employee documents and emails. So Avid Life Media will be liable for the fraud and extreme harm to the millions of users. This is so the ambition. So these are the summary of the data dumps which gets leaked by the attacker. So the database dump file of the entire user data and the email conversation of the users and business and the confidential documents of the Avid Life Media and moreover user passwords. The most interestingly, this the user password is here almost everything is predictable password from the layman perspective. Yeah, like a 111 ABC kind of stuff. So the forensic team they taken used the honeynet project method to tear down this entire case and the pseudo forensic style to again just to solve this entire AM data leak by the impacting. So this investigation was resembling the journalist way of, exploring this case, though how the journal will explore the case with all the possible way, with all the available data from the case. So as part of the investigation, the team started with, grabbing the AM leak data from the dark web through the Tor browser. As you all know, what is Tor browser? I think so. So with the help of the person who feels uncomfortable to reveal this identity named Boris, yeah, this guy helped the forensic team to download the Ashley Madison user torrent file. So as you can see here, this the original image of the file name, yeah, this has been found with SHA-1 hash digital fingerprints. So which used to authenticate, message sent from server client vice versa communications. So the file named as Impact Team Ashley release with .torrent extension. So after extracting this file, the forensic team taken some very tiny identities of the attacker through this file hashes. Yeah, that was not strong enough to tear down the attackers. So this is a hash and this is like the file name. So once the extracted files along with their sizes, which means once they extracted the files, as you can see all these files along with the sizes, and having more than a, some files are having more than a gigabytes, such as you can see here, like a 9 GB, 4 GB, and some files are having 3 GB and 2 GBs, or like a huge files which contains entire confidential information about Ashley Madison and its parent company too, called Avid Life Media. So this image especially shows the SHA-1 fingerprint hashes of all the internal extracted files. So with the cryptographic decode mechanism it's available so far, the forensic team decoded, and these are all the PGP signatures that they found. Yeah, these signature files which prove that the one or more person who part of this impact team attacks that they released on the information. Yeah. So will it be able to track down the attacker identity? So let's look into that a little furthermore. The attacker doesn't have any relationship with the dark web, and they are all very brilliant and clever on how not to leave the traces of themselves in the dark web. So the team not able to match any identities with attacker real life that they have found in the dark web. So here the attacker used the kind of communication medium to just complete their entire attacking activities. So here hackers used Onion web server to dump the AM data. The data has been released without any evidence means the anonymous messaging link through Tor network, because these servers use only HTML or text as a content transaction. So the second thing is the attacker precisely handled OPSEC, which means the Operation Security Risk Management Precautions, while stealing the data from EM. Yeah. So in other words, the security and the risk management process that prevents the sensitive information from getting into the wrong hands. So attacker team effectively handled this OPSEC method to prevent themselves being recognized by the FBI. Yeah. So so here the team verified the PGP key. So when they're verifying the attacker PGP key, the PGP signed on these files means that attacker saying that they did this, but they cannot identify, which means the team cannot identify the real-time proof of the attacker, whether they are did as a group or individual. But one thing that they found that in the future, if any files has been signed with this particular PGP key, the forensic team have confidence to easily find them. So as you can see, this is a PGP key signed by the attacker in this image. So forensic team has verified, extracted file with these all PGP key. And what they found that when does this dump was created and signed and zipped. Yeah. So once they verified this, this is how they made, this is how the data is look like. This is original data. And as you can see, this file dump was created on, 15 August 2015, exact the time 11:23 a.m. So from the forensic team view, there are two reasons why attacker made these PGP key signed files. The first reason could be they want to reveal you their identity, but claim the responsibility that who made this, but not the real-time identity. And second possible reason could be like, they might want to stress that this is not the fake or dummy leaks to Ashley Madison team. Yeah. So is it so hard to catch the attackers? Yes, that's what the case details are saying that. So this is the attacker metadata extracted from the PGP key. So as you can see this image, this metadata contains a user ID says impact team and mailter.net. So this is known the Mailter dark web email service, and they track down the lost location of the attacker, so which is called HTTP the Mailter on 5v.onion. This kind of the attacker lost location, known location. But still, the forensic member not able to send an email to this email ID as it's not holding a valid MX record, which means this MX record which says that how this email to reroutes to the email server. So this is it's making the valid pathway of where this email has to go to the which email server. Yeah. So what are all the possibilities of the Ashley Madison attacker be caught by cybercrime officials? Yeah, in case if any of this following happens, so definitely there is 100% possibilities that the attackers were caught by the cybercrime officials. So the first reason would be, the word of mouth, which means the spread secrets. So if the hackers share the information with the surroundings, if in case this is not kept secret, then likely they can get caught. And from the Foreign Bureau investigation side, they can make the trap and caught attacker while attacker review their emails, which we found from the dark web through the web browser. Yeah. When they're trying to review the email, that could be the possibility that can be caught by the FBI because FBI has that kind of capabilities and technologies. So the third thing, the bad configuration of the attacker server. Yeah. If the attacker fails to configure the server with thoroughness, there could be a tiny default configuration. The poor configuration could leak an internal IP of the attacker. It's going to be even worse. Yeah. So it's going to be like the end life of the attacker if there's a bad server configuration from the side. Yeah. The fourth one is like improper image masking at the attacker side. Yeah, the attackers have not camouflaged, if the attacker not camouflaged the writing or image creation techniques which they used in this attacking techniques, and they leave the certain semantic traces that might be used to profile them. The final thing, the attacker, they slipped up during the persistent attack against the AI, and investigators hired by the AIM, if the investigators hired by the AIM are intelligent enough, uh, it's they can easily find the evidence leading back to their attackers during their persistent attack. Yeah, but unfortunately, the forensic team don't believe these attackers will ever be identified if none of those things take place. The forensic team assisted, the few FBI and NYPD cybercrime investigators, and they believe that these cybercrime team have difficult tasks ahead of them. Yeah. So let's look into the some of the files of the the leaked data. So here in the top level directory, you can also find these additional files here. So within the Ashley Madison dump.7g, it says .7g is a file that you can extract and view the following files. So here the number of for the first file is like it shows the number of traveling man purchases .docx. So which means this is the SQL queries to investigate, high travel users purchases. And followed by, here the second quarter to 2013 summary compensation, the detail manager input traverse team XLS file, which means this shows that the employee compensation listings. And followed by the user information and company information of the primary corporate domain of the Avid Life Media. And this file shows that the Noel's loan agreement PDF. This is like the promissory note for the CEO to pay back a 3 million in Canadian bonuses. Yeah. So this is a customer data which appears to be a risk profile of the major security concerns that Avid Life Media has regarding their customers' data. Yeah. And the major user dump is on the list of the concerns. This is a list of all the ALM associated bank accounts numbers, and it's just owns by them. This is a PayPal accounts, the various users passes for the ALM PayPal accounts, which is 16 in total so far. They've been found from the data. So this is the floor plan, which is a seating map of the main office. This type of map is usually used for the network deployment purpose, and followed by the credit usage, which investigate the credit card purchases, and then the company overview. This is a very detailed breakdown of the the current biz health, the marketing spend, and the future product plans, and followed by the corporate chart.ptx. So this is like a detailed block diagram defining, the relationship between the various tags and the legal business entities names related to the Ashley Madison company as well as the parenting company of Avid Life Media businesses. So this is ALM, the major shareholders information. This is very, very confidential one, right? The list of each major shareholders and their equity stakes. It has the entire information about the equity shares of the shareholders. And and this is like incorporation.pdf. This has, around like the 110-page articles of incorporation, which means how did they started this company, the every aspect of the initial company formations, and every milestone of the companies, and how did they, what are the strategies they handled in the business, and to brought the benefit to the package, and kind of advertisement strategies, and who has been involved in the advertisement strategies, and every single details about the top to end of the company profile. That's it's This article of incorporation has this all information. So these are the following types that they will examine for the metadata. So so these are metadata types like eight. They found like eight text, eight dogs, and six SLFs, XPDFs, two PPT, and one PNG, and one 7zip file. So far, it's a brief description about the extracted file from the leaked data. So the remaining presentation is going to be carried out by the Malati. She's going to give a details, depth information on the data analysis. Yeah, thank you.
So in the coming few slides, we'll talk about the leaked data, how it was analyzed. The analysis was done by a journalist called Annalie, and we will be talking about her in the next few slides as well. So coming to the actual data, it was gathered that about 37 million profiles of people uh, were obtained, and it was seen that these were the people seeking discreet affairs. So, what was discovered was that about 12,000 of these profiles belonged to women who were active. The remaining 5.5 million women had profiles that were said to be abandoned directly after, just after they were created. So, this was a little suspicious. So, the journalist searched the entire data dump of Ashley Madison, and she found out that there were several profiles that were created from the same IP address, which suggested that there were many, many fake accounts. Now, there are several reasons to call Ashley Madison's parent company a complete fraud, uh, including the fact that they forced men to pay to delete their profiles, and they still kept their personal data anyway. But then one could say that this fraud definitely goes beyond the paid delete scam. Um, Now, the company by itself promises men that they will meet real women who want to have affairs. But to email women, these men would have to pay extra, and then they had to pay more again if they want to send another gift, or some pictures, or some silly gifs or something like that. So, as mentioned in the Gizmodo website, this website was the site where the journalist had given an analysis of the data dump. So there was a hilarious comparison of Ashley Madison with the game called Farmville. So most of you would have played Farmville or even probably heard about it. So um, using the site as a man is quite a bit like playing Farmville, because except for the fact that instead of blowing the amount on fake cow upgrades, you're blowing it on messages to fake women. Now, at least Farmville is upfront about the fact that you're burning money for a dumb fantasy. So that's how hilarious the comparison is. So men can even pay a premium rate for a quote guaranteed affair. But then Ashley Madison never promised men that they would find women easily. But what they did promise was that there were real women on this website. They were using it actively, and they inhabited the site and were very active there. But if a man paid enough for these messages, he would definitely meet his match. But instead of talking to real women on the website, these men were mostly talking to these chatbots and fielding robo emails from systems that were saying things like XYZ has indicated that she is interested in someone just like you, and you should send her a custom message to connect. Now, again, this custom message would cost money. When this person hits reply, the man is redirected to the page that says that shows three different plans. One says a fat guarantee, the second one says elite plan, the third one says introductory, and each would have different rates like 1,000 and 500 and 100 credits. And so this was a package deal. So moving further into the data, what Annalie found out was the correlation between the missing data and the bots. So now Ashley Madison's source code, it comes from the second dump that was released by the Impact team. Um, so this was a roughly 20 gigabytes of data that was compressed, and it was twice the size of the first released data. Although the data was partly corrupted, it did hold lots of readable company emails, and it revealed that Ashley Madison was in fact paying people to create fake women's profiles and even to chat with men on the site. Now, the first thing that Annalie learned when she looked at the code was that the database the Impact team released on 18th of August 2015, and on which she had based her reporting about the number of active female users. It was just a tiny portion of the actual member data that was collected by Ashley Madison. Now, the code, in fact, makes references to about roughly 550 data tables, but there are only 4 tables in the data from the impact team. So this changes the picture drastically of what we're actually looking at the database. So when she looked at the data, after consulting with a couple of analysts and determining that some of the date timestamp columns were the only ones with names that were ideally used to track the user activity, she concluded that the date stamps in those particular columns referred to the last time the people checked their Ashley Madison messages, or in fact even tried to start a chat. When there was a drastic disparity between the numbers of men with the date stamp of the women. So what she interpreted was the men were emailing a lot with the bots, and the women barely even emailed anyone at all. Now, what was even weirder was these date stamp columns in the data did not record any human activity at all. They record the last time a bot or a quote an engager. An engager is again Ashley Madison's internal jargon. So this bot, they recorded the last time when this bot emailed or chatted with a member of the site. So what this means was that they had absolutely no data recording of any human activity at all in the Ashley Madison database dump from the impact team. And all they could see was when fake humans contacted real ones. So, in other words, the dramatic discrepancy between men and women is completely because Ashley Madison software developers very well trained their bots to talk almost exclusively to men. So there were two very brave researchers who came forward to tip off Annalie, and they explained what those columns actually measured. Um, so they poured over the code and they realized that when the bots that were called engagers, they talked to humans, they were programmed to make a note in the database under the fields called BC underscore chat underscore last underscore name and reply underscore email underscore last underscore name. So once they checked the sections of code they pointed to, the evidence was undeniable. Um, these columns were indeed populated by bots, and they checked in every time they talked to a human male. Now, according to Ashley Madison, the website claims that roughly 5.5 million of its 37 million accounts are female. But according to the research done by Annalie, she proved that 3 in every 10,000 female accounts were real. So that was the ratio. Annalie began her analysis by finding out that about 10,000 accounts were created with ashleymadison.com domain, which implies that they were test subscriptions. So out of these 10,000 accounts, 9,000 belonged to women, and the rest were categorized as no gender or either as male. What Annalie did next was very interesting. So she studied IP addresses and she discovered that the second most popular IP address that was found in more than 80,000 profiles was an address that was most likely created on a home machine that was at Ashley Madison's office. So about 69,000 of the profiles that were created with that particular home IP address were female, and the remaining 12,000 were either male or had no gender specified in it. And another interesting and strange detail that was included was the fact that the most popular female last name was a very unusual name, and this particular name matched with the name of a woman who worked at the company for a company about 10 years ago. So the unusual name had more than 350 entries. So Annalise said that this was most likely a result of someone within the Ashley Madison enterprise trying to create a test account. Now, moving on to the passwords. So, after cracking about 4,000 passwords, there was one decrypted password that floated, kept on circulating at the top of the list. And it was not the first time that they came across this password. So, when the hackers, the impact team, swiped about 36 million accounts that were associated with the website, there was definitely a rush to see and find out what had been stolen. So this table here shows the password in one column and the number of times it was used in the other column. So as you see here, the password 123456 was used 202 times. So now the tens and millions of passwords that were leaked were hashed and they were scrambled using bcrypt. So there are many other websites that have suffered data leak and they've used very weak cryptography to hash the passwords, or probably even none at all. Um, and there was a blog post which specifically mentioned that the security in Ashley Madison's passwords was a very refreshing change because the users with strong passwords were very safe. But then for the weaker passwords, the same cannot be said. Now, this can be compared with Adobe's data breach in the year 2013. This actually led to the release of 38 million Adobe usernames and passwords. And the cracked ashleymadison.com passwords were just as bad as Adobe's. This was again because the most popular password, even in the Adobe accounts, was 123456. And it seems that lessons from the past were never learned, because even Yahoo suffered a data breach in the year 2012 with the same password 123456. So this password was on the top of the list. So from the data that was extracted from the Ashley Madison data dump, there were lots of users that appear to have used work email addresses. So this brings a question echoing around the room. How could people be so naive? How could they be so foolish? But now it's clear that as many as these 36 million people who signed up for this Ashley Madison account didn't have the first clue about the basic safeguarding of their own privacy. Why would you put all that compromising information in the hands of one website? And the worst thing was, more than a few were signing up from their own work addresses. They did find out that after analyzing some of the email addresses, obviously some of them were spoofed, because some of them were .fbi.gov with some funny name, and something with nsa.gov. They were clearly fakes. But then after checking up, they found out that some of these work emails were indeed legitimate, and there were some even British police officers using their .police.uk email accounts. And it was later found out that they were a senior member of the British Civil Service, and it was later found out that they were in a position that would make him a ripe target for blackmail. Now, it seems astonishing that IT departments were letting sites like Ashley Madison through their website filters. Um, Definitely having an open access policy to internet use is well and good, and studies do suggest that they help in productivity. But then dating sites, um, I think there needs to be a lot of rechecking on their filters.
Hi everyone, my name is Kamal Preet, and now let's talk about the legal implications of the Ashley Madison case. Two Canadian law firms have filed a $578 million class action lawsuit against the companies that run Ashley Madison after a hacker group data breach exposed some 39 million membership on the adultery website. Many other fraudulent activities can be committed by using the user's personal information. Ontario law firms Shani Lawyers and Sons and Strasbourg LLP filed the lawsuit against the corporations that run AshleyMedicine.com, which were Avid Dating Life Incorporation and Avid Life Media Incorporation. Ashley Madison's parent company, Avid Life Media, tried a unique tactic to limit access to the stolen databases online in the US by pursuing taking down requests under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or which is called DMCA. The DMCA allows people and companies who claim to own a copyright to content to have that content removed from the internet if it is used without their permission. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act was signed into law by first President Clinton on October 28, 1998. Let's talk about relevant legislation and competent authorities. First is Principal Data Protection legislation. The Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, which is called as PEPIDA, applies to the collection, use, and disclosure of employees' personal information by federally regulated employers. Three provinces have privacy legislation of general application to the private sector, which are similar to PEPIDA. First is Alberta Personal Information Protection Act, that is called Alberta PIPA. Second is British Columbia Personal Information Act, known as BC PIPA. Third is Quebec Act, representing the protection of personal information into the private sector, known as Quebec Act. Collectively, PIPEDA, Alberta PIPA, BC PIPA, and CUPIC Act are referred as the principal legislation. So, there is a sector-specific legislation that impacts data protection, which is called the Privacy Act, applies to personal information processed by federal government institutions. Each Canadian jurisdiction also has legislation that applies to personal information handled by public bodies or institutions within the relevant province or territory. Most provinces also have consumer protection legislation, under which it includes provisions requiring consumer reporting agencies to ensure the accuracy, limit the disclosure of, and give consumers access to information contained in consumers' reports. Then comes the Federal Bank Act that provides for the protection of all registers and records required or authorized under the Bank Act, which includes certain customer records. There are some industry regulators or associations that have issued guidance and have established regulatory requirements relating to data protection, like the Canadian Securities Administrators, that is called CSA, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, OSFI, the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization called IIROC, and the Mutual Fund Dealers Association of Canada called MFDA. Next, we will discuss the legal and the regulatory consequences. Under privacy measures such as Canada's Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, called PEPEDA, and the United States Federal Trade Commission Act, improperly storing, inadequately guarding, and exposing customer data are failures that can prompt investigations, fines, and federal litigation, all of which are costly and can drag on for years after a breach. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada announced in August that it had been commenced an investigation concerning ALM incorporation with other international counterparts. On the civil level, class action litigation is one of the most costly and time-consuming results of a large-scale data breach. Within the first week of the data dump, law firms in the US and Canada had begun soliciting victims to join class actions. About a dozen suits has been filed by mid-September, with two of the earliest claiming almost 600 million in damages. In addition to claims like emotional distress, lawyers in the case cite the company's failure to promptly notify users about the threat and release of personal information. The litigation proves one of the most interesting and the far-reaching aspects of the case, as previous attempts to lodge class action suits in the wake of the data breach have often stalled over the question of harm to plaintiffs. Even the CEO Noel Biderman repeatedly made the lofty comments about this website's security over the years. However, the customer has to pay an amount of $19 in order to completely remove their personal information. Data released also offered some evidence from long-time allegations that many of the women listed on the site were not real. In January 2012, an official complaint was sent by California Authority General Kamala Harris alleging the company fraudulently used fake profiles to get consumers to pay to play, and the new data could certainly inspire more efforts to reclaim users' money. According to analysis from Gizmodo's NLA, the exposed internal documents show that the company's developers created software bots to generate angels, which were fake women, whose details and photos were batch generated and then operated by specially created software that sent email and chat messages to users. A user who wanted to read them or respond would have to pay up to $290 for a package of Ashley Medicine credits. Internal emails also show that employees and Biderman debated how to describe boards to head off member complaints and possibly lawsuits. In mid-September, a class action was filed in Maryland regarding the use of those fembots, claiming violation of Maryland's Consumer Protection Act. Implications may also trickle down to the organization level. More than 15,000 accounts were registered to email address from .gov and .mil domains, which host government and military email, and an untold number are linked to other work accounts. Considerable reputational and legal vulnerability can be introduced by such missteps, as work emails are fair game if internal issue arise. And courts have determined that using work email for personal communication extinguishes any expectation of privacy. Okay, in this slide, we will talk about individual rights. There are some key rights that individuals have in relation to the processing of their personal data. First is right of access of data. Individuals generally have the right to be informed of the existence, use and disclosure of their personal information and to request access to the personal information. Second is right to rectification of errors. If an individual successfully demonstrates that their personal information is inaccurate or incomplete, the organization must amend the personal information. Next is right to deletion. The principal legislation does not currently provide a specific right to deletion of personal information. However, giving effect to an individual's request to correct their personal information with the requirements to retain information only for that period that is required to fulfill the purpose that it was collected may require deletion for some personal information at the request of an individual. Next is the right to data portability. The principal legislation does not currently provide for a right to data portability. However, the Quebec Modernization Act has incorporated such a right into the Quebec Act. Now, fifth, we'll talk about right to withdraw consent. An individual can generally withdraw their consent to the collection, use, and disclosure of the personal information on reasonable notice, subject to legal restrictions. The organization must inform the individual of the implications of such withdrawal. Then is right to object to marketing. Individuals must generally consent to the collection, use, and disclosure of their personal information, including for marketing purposes. Last is the right to complain to the relevant data protection authorities. Individuals have the right to file a complaint with the relevant privacy regulators. Now, let's quickly talk about the legislative restrictions on the use of cookies. The OPC has taken the position that information collected about individuals' online activities by means of technologies such as cookies may constitute personal information and therefore be subject to PEPEDA. So, the use of cookies should comply with any applicable privacy laws. Under CASL, a person is generally prohibited from installing a computer program or another person's computer system unless they have the person's express consent to do so. However, a person is considered to consent to the installation of a cookie if the person's conduct is such that it is reasonable to believe that they consented to the program's installation. Our next slide explains a bit about data security and data breach. PEPEDA requires that an organization protect personal information against loss or theft, as well as unauthorized access, disclosure, copying, use, or modification using the physical, organizational, and technological measures that are appropriate to the sensitivity of the personal information, as well as the amount, distribution, and the format of the information and the method of storage. Alberta PIPA, BC PIPA, and the Quebec Act also include general requirements to protect the personal information. An organization that transfers personal information to a third party for processing must use contractual or other means to protect such personal information by ensuring that the processor also implements appropriate safeguards. Some industry regulators, including CSA, OSFI, ROC, and MFDA, as explained before, require organizations to monitor, detect, prevent, and mitigate incidents impacting personal information and other cybersecurity incidents. Let's move to enforcement and sanctions. There are different enforcement powers of the data protection authorities. First is investigation powers. Canadian privacy regulators are generally empowered to conduct investigations into organizations' compliance with the principal legislation. Second is corrective powers. At the conclusion of an investigation under PEPADA, the OPC will typically issue a report of findings, including the conclusion of its investigation and non-binding recommendations to rectify and prevent the reoccurrence of any non-compliance. Next is authorization and adversary powers. The Canadian privacy regulators, including providing independent reviews and resolutions of requests and complaints related to access to information request and handling of the personal information. Another one is imposition of administrative fines for infringements of specified GDPR provisions. Canadian privacy regulators are not empowered to impose administrative fines for non-compliance with the GDPR. Last is non-compliance with Data Protection Authority. Under PEPADA, if an organization fails to abide the terms of a voluntary compliance agreement with the OPC may apply to the federal court for relief, including an order requiring the organization to comply with the terms of the compliance agreement. Lastly, we will discuss the trends and developments. Collaborations between the various Canadian privacy regulators continue to be a trend. For example, in a joint investigation, the OPC, Quebec Commission, BC regulator, and Alberta regulator found that a US-based facial recognition service breached the principal legislation by collecting online images of individuals in Canada via web scraping without their knowledge or consent. There are few laws that are a focus for the data protection regulator. For example, the statutory reform, including stronger enforcement mechanisms. For several years, the OPC has been advocating for significant reforms to PEPADA, including enhanced enforcement powers and penalties. Next is amendments to Quebec's privacy laws. The first phase of the Quebec Modernization Act will come into force on September 2022, which will materially amend the Quebec Act. Last is the privacy implications of new technologies. Recent cases and guidance indicate that regulators are focused on the privacy impact of new technologies, including automatic scanning and web scraping tools, smart devices or the Internet of Things, and software used for online learnings. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Zining. Next, I will introduce the OPM case with my team member Nirmal and Regita. The Office of Personnel Management is a United States government agency established on January 1, 1979. It was formerly the Federal Civil Service Commission, located in Washington, D.C. The number of employees working for the company is more than 2,000 by 2021. The organization is responsible for managing civil servants and their corresponding personnel files. OPM established the regulation to protect health insurance, life insurance, and retirement benefits for government employees, as well as retirees and their dependents. In June 2015, OPM announced that it had discovered 2 months earlier that its data center had been hacked, resulting in a massive data breach, including more than 4 million records for relevant personnel information. The attack was traced to Chinese hackers. In July 2015, the OPM acknowledged that it had been hacked twice, resulting in the breach for more than 21.5 million personal information and 5.6 million fingerprint data of current and retired federal employees. The leaks included detailed personal information such as social security numbers, names, dates of birth, residential addresses, educational and work history. family member, and personal financial information. The U.S. officials say it is one of the largest data breaches in the government history. The OPM attack was first detected by the Computer Emergency Response Center through the incident, but it claims that the OPM network may have been penetrated before the incident was deployed. On September 7, the U.S. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee released a report which criticized the OPM for poor leadership. Despite years of warning about information security, it has never taken effective action to protect the vast amount of sensitive data it stores. The report argued that if only OPM had taken basic security precautions and increased security awareness, the breach might not have happened. After the data breach occurred, the OPM investigation and review. The following are the timing points of some key events. In July 2012, the U.S. CERT reports that the OPM network has invaded by hackers and hacked backdoor software was found on one of the servers. In March 2014, the U.S. CERT warned that the data theft in OPM networks. In April 2014, a specific malware was discovered by OPM contractor SRA and brought to the attention to US CERT. In May 2014, the attacker remotely logged into the network using OPM authentication information and installed the backdoor software Plug X. In June 2014, the hackers successfully installed the malicious software on the Keypoint web server using different administrator accounts. In July 2014, the attackers successfully stole background checks from the OPM system, and OPM officially admitted that its personal identity information was compromised and leaked. In October 2014, the attacker removed from the OPM network to the DOI data center of the United States Department of the Interior, where the OPM stolen data was stored. In December 2014, attackers transferred 4.2 million personal information stolen from the OPM system from the Interior Ministry DOI database. In March 2015, the OPM fingerprint data was stolen. In April 2015, the OPM confirmed the occurrence of the massive data breach and notified the Congress. Here are two security companies involved in emergency response to the OPM attacks. First is the Sapphire. The Sapphire is a small security services company specializing in providing security incident emergency response services to the U.S. government. The company's mission is to provide a rapid response capability worldwide. Integrated centralized investigation, dynamic virtualization analysis, comprehensive forensic and illegal image identification. The second is Silence. It is a network security company founded in 2012. The Silence security platform uses a set of algorithm-based security protocol to detect network vulnerability, while Silence also have a hacker learning system that uses machine learning technology to predict and protect against the network threats. Currently, more than 1,000 customers worldwide use the Silence system. In June 2016, Silence raised $100 million in Series D funding. Silence has acquired Ridgeway, SKL Forensics, SparePoint, and other information security companies that provide the honeypot technology and cybersecurity assessment for industrial control systems. Here are some clues to attackers and malware information. Forensic analysis found that in 2014, Attackers use the malware HiKit and CNC domain name information before and after the intrusion. The HiKit backdoor is one of the hacking tools often used by the AXM, APT attack group. This type of malware is usually a variant of Poison Ivy, Ghost, and ZX Shell. In addition, according to OPM's specific domain name analysis tool, the attackers mainly use the three registered domain names for CNC activities. They are opmsecurity.org, wdcnewpost.com, and opmlearning.org. The three domain names are registered to Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, and Tony Stark. In 2014, attackers attacked the OPM network using the HiKit backdoor program, ultimately using PlugX malware to steal background check data from the RIPS. HiKit and PlugX are common hacking tools used by APT organization, AXM, and DeepPanda. There are three main reasons for the OPM information leakage. The first is information security of government contractors is varying. In the U.S. federal government, while providing support services for the government, contractors also possess a large amount of confidential government information, which is vulnerable to APT attacks. For example, in August 2014, the U.S. Investigation Services, a tractor used by OPM to conduct background checks on federal employees, suffered a cyber breach that may have stolen personal information on 31,000 government employees and related background investigators. The USIS also notified OPM immediately after the incident. In the summer of 2014, the US CERT conducted a cybersecurity assessment of Keypoint, a government contractor, and the situation was bleak. In December 2014, the Keypoint discovered that the personal information of 48,000 federal employees had been leaked as a result of a cyber attack, including OPM employee information. After USIS was hacked in August 2014, the OPM terminated its contract with USIS and hired two other contractors, SRA and Keypoint. But the Keypoint was also hacked in December 2014. In February 2015, Anthem, the second largest health insurance company in the United States, was hacked and the data of nearly 80 million users was leaked. Primera, a small insurance company that worked with OPM, was hacked in March 2015, resulting in the theft of information for about 11 million people. At present, many government agencies rely heavily on third-party contractors for information system maintenance, and there are many potential security risks. For example, employees of contractors can log into the government network system using unauthorized authentication as government employees. Second, governments should stress their information security capabilities to cope with continued attacks. With the deepening of government informatization construction, the ability of U.S. government to provide information services to the public has been constantly improved, but at the same time it has led to new security risks. In 2008, the federal government began to focus on the security of its own systems, but the attacks in cyberspace have become more diverse and sophisticated, and the attacks are getting worse. Take the OPM attack as an example. In May 2012, members of a hacker group invaded the OPM database and stole 37 groups of usernames and passwords. In 2011, DHS defined hacker members only as a script. Third one is OPM is unable to identify and deal with threats at critical moments. Before 2014, there were various vulnerabilities in OPM networks. In the moment of 2014, the inefficient leadership and improper decision-making ability led to the occurrence of data leakage. In the fall of 2008, the OPM Inspection Office reported that the important vulnerability in information systems in the previous year had not been fully addressed and could pose a significant threat to the information systems. At the same time, the inspectorate warned that the OPM's existing security policy had not been updated for years and that there were major flaws in its main authentication system. In addition, the OPM lacks professional information security personnel in the implementation of measures and milestone plans. In September 2009, the OPM Inspection Office reported that the OPM information security situation get worse. In March 2012, the Inspection Office pointed out that the OCIO lacked the effective authority in dealing with information security issues. In addition, the OPM system needs to be moved to a centralized management platform as soon as possible because the basic programming currently running is flawed. However, until the end of 2013, due to insufficient personnel and budget constraints, centralized information security management has not been realized. Next, I will hand over to my team member to continue.
Now, since we have a little bit of background on the OPM case, let's dive into the case analysis. One of the most publicized data breaches in the USA happened to be the one that occurred at the US government's Office of Personnel Management, which is also called OPM, in the spring of 2015. Now, there were a lot of speculations going on when this news broke out that the series of events in which the information systems were hacked and information concerning the hacking was not reported in a timely manner. There was a rapid growth to the extent of the security breach in magnitude, and it was a topic of a federal litigation. This incident further caused the federal government pledging to spend 330 million USD on anti-fraud safeguards and protection strategies for the 21.5 million affected victims. This event shows several reminders and deficits on the part of federal government. First, the reminder of ever-looming risk of cyber threats and events are always present. Second, requirements appear not to be in place to notify or report to the public or respective authorities in the event of such incidents. Third, this breach highlighted the deficiency in federal bureaus then established training programs and reporting procedures which failed to prevent such threats. It is said that the OPM breach may have compromised of 4 different security breaches, which resulted in the much publicized data theft of fingerprint information, personal information, and similar data. However, several reports reveal that the major officials of OPM was made aware of the breach only until April 15, 2015. The 2 breaches prior to OPM breach was United States Investigation Services, USS, and the one after, Keypoint Government Solutions. The USIS breach that transpired on March 2014 had been attributed to hackers from China, but this information was not made public immediately as USIS officials believed no PIA was stolen or compromised. News of this security breach was only reported to the public in July 2014 by New York Times. There were 2 breaches associated with the OPM data breach. It was reported by the Office of Personnel Management in June 2015 that 1 million records of background investigation of former current and prospective employees from the Federal Bureau had been compromised in a cybersecurity incident that began in the early of 2014. It was reported initially that the intrusion by hackers had gone undetected for a period of a year, after which, using the stolen credentials in May 2014, the hacker had created a backdoor for exfiltration of data. Unfortunately, during the investigation of the first opium breach, the investigators discovered an occurrence of a second security violation of the opium networks. The second breach that occurred was determined by the end of May 2015, while the initial opium breach was being investigated. In the light of the second breach, the opium's director at that time, Catherine, had testified saying that there was a high degree of confidence that the opium systems related to background investigations of current, former, and prospective federal government employees and those for whom a federal background investigation was conducted may have been compromised. The database stored information that was stolen and compromised included personal record and background investigations comprising information such as financial records, social security numbers, IT system credentials, fingerprint data, and performance evaluations. Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) states that the stolen data enables China to recognize targets for espionage campaigns and provide an aid in the programming of artificial intelligence systems. It is still uncertain how the intruders during these attacks gained access to the opium networks, but the Inspector General (IG) of OPM had warned of the lack of cybersecurity procedures in place, which was never addressed at the agency for years. It was reported that the opium network was vulnerable as majority of the data was stored on outmoded systems, and the failure to employ multi-factor authentication on any of the systems which could have prevented unauthorized access to highly classified data. The breach was not a complicated one, as this breach was sophisticated due to the usage of 1970s legacy systems that operated on COBOL mainframe application, which had not been updated since the occurrence of Y2K bug. Once the intruders gained access to the opium networks, they ingrained into the systems, gained root access to the Federal Bureau's Active Directory, and malware was spread throughout the network. So this breach highlights the US government's inability to identify or prevent such attacks, curtailing malicious actors who are motivated and capable to employ advanced persistent threats to computer networks. The scale of this breach and the number of people affected shows the nature of risk associated with such cyber threat incident by individuals and businesses. Also, this breach highlights how the nature of this information obtained or stolen by the intruders has a capability of bringing down government operations and create national security threats. Now let's discuss about how the opium breach could have been prevented. Two of the disturbing features of the breach was reporting failures and delayed notifications, which was an additional risk to the victims to the breach. The first signs of the breach appeared in June 2014, but Opium had public released this information only by June 2015. While Opium had stated that they would notify the people impacted by the breach, this went on for as long as October 2015. This gave the intruders a 2-year head start to utilize the stolen data in any way possible. Victims of such data breach could face consequences such as exploitation of sensitive personal information. It does not seem there is any federal law in place for reporting cyber intrusion incidents. Timely reporting would have enabled the respective affected employees and agencies to take necessary steps and precautions to safeguard their interests sooner rather than 2 years later. Apart from the delay in notifying employees, early warnings which could have been revealed vulnerabilities leading to the data breach sooner were overlooked. As early as 2007, OPM's Inspector General had warned material disadvantage due to the absence of IT policy and security procedures. The IG went on to report these vulnerabilities until 2013 in the FISMA, that is Federal Information Security Management Act reports. The outdated systems to store sensitive data and failure to employ multi-factor authentication on any of the systems was one of the contributing factors to the breach. The systems used were 1970s legacy systems and operated on COBOL mainframe applications. It was mandatory to update the obsolete cyber defense systems such as antivirus programs, firewalls, and it was important to adopt more innovative cyber programs and techniques. While most cyber defense tools are used to prevent unauthorized access in the network, such as intrusion prevention and detection systems, that is IPS and IDS, firewalls, identify credential and access management systems, are primarily implemented between an agency's external and internal resource, such as between the public network and an agency's local area network. Cybersecurity experts, in the light of recent events such as the OPM breach, have pushed for innovative cybersecurity tools that are crucial in combating sophisticated adversaries. These tools move towards regularly monitoring normal system behavior and promptly recognizing unusual behavior and probable threats. Some of these next-gen cybersecurity tools that can be utilized are endpoint detection and response, highly adaptive cybersecurity services, and zero trust. Let's discuss a little bit more about these. Endpoint detection response. The typical antivirus systems prevent potential malicious program by running identical indicators of the malicious program against a reference of known malware. It is inconsequential for malicious actors to modify these indicators within their malware code and employ distinctive attacks on their victims. Endpoint detection and response systems addresses the challenges of signature-based systems by employing heuristic-based security. EDR systems employ a small code at all endpoints and services of the organization to recognize normal behavior. This data is combined with other data from various endpoints to produce the organization's network security. And if the EDR system discovers unusual and potential malicious code on an endpoint, it can automatically and immediately take steps to mediate the problem. Highly adaptive cybersecurity services. The General Services Administration (GSA) delivers contract vehicles to Federal Bureau. Highly adaptive cybersecurity services, which are also called HACS, is the other major area GSA provides contract offerings. HACS includes services such as threat actor hunting, continuous monitoring services, penetration testing and incident response, security architecture reviews, risk and vulnerability evaluations. These services are intended to enable agencies, prominence into the agency's network operations, IT inventory, and cybersecurity posture by considering continual and dynamic assessments, which will help the agency recognize risks quickly and mitigate them. Nevertheless, advanced expertise is required for HACS to identify the results and act based on recommendations. The last one is Zero Trust. Zero Trust architecture revolve around restricting access inside a network and constantly examining if a given user has the required permissions to access a certain resource. It focuses on the resource or data being retrieved by a user irrespective of its place. Zero Trust offers a compilation of ideas and concepts aimed to reduce uncertainty by implementing precise and least privilege for each access decisions when faced with a compromise on the network.
OPM case legal implication. Background. The Federal Information Security Management Act of 2002, also known as FISMA, gives the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, abbreviated OMB, the power to issue security standards for federal systems. These standards are based on mandatory minimum requirements designed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, also known as NIST. The standards issued are mandatory for all federal systems, although the head of the federal agency may elect to implement more rigorous standards than those of the NIST recommended. In 2014, Congress amended FISMA to provide more comprehensive legislative framework for federal information security. The amended FISMA leaves the power to oversee the Federal Information Security Scheme with the Director of OMB, but indicates that the Director must work in conjunction with the Secretary of Homeland Security. The amended FISMA also details that the responsibilities assigned to the heads of federal agencies to provide information security breaches. Additionally, it established extensive reporting requirements for federal agencies in the information security realm. To further enhance cybersecurity measures, the amended FISMA established a Federal Information Security Incident Center to coordinate and assist information security efforts. Let's now talk about other laws in US that correspondence to information security before the attack. The Klinger-Cohen Act of 1996 is the initial legislation that has provisioning towards the cybersecurity policies and laws. The section entitled as Information Technology Management Reform was aimed at acquisition policies that are related to the information security domain. These policies mandate that the Director of OBM is responsible for developing and implementing training sessions in the information security management for the executives in different federal agencies, and the agency heads are responsible for implementing adequate procedures and practices to ensure the information security of her or his department. The next act that has provisioning for cybersecurity is the Homeland Security Act of 2002, also known as HSA. The HSA Act has developed as a response to the terror attack on September 11, 2001, and has section entitled as the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2002. This act provides provisioning for research and acquisition of advanced investigative, forensic, and analysis tools by the states and local law enforcement to aid them in cybersecurity incident investigations. On February 12, 2013, President Obama signed an executive order titled as Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. To achieve its stated purpose, The executive order allows the federal government to convey information about cyber threats to the targeted private organization in order to protect critical infrastructure. The executive order also creates the cybersecurity framework as a set of voluntary security standards to provide cybersecurity guidance to third parties. The National Cybersecurity Protection Act of 2014 created the National Cybersecurity and Communication Integration Center. The NCCIC's objective is to coordinate information shared about cybersecurity risks between federal and private entities, and to act as an information gathering resource. The Act mandates federal agencies to coordinate and implement critical infrastructure attack response plans together also. Now let's look at how the laws changed in US after the OPM attack till now. On October 27, 2015, the Senate passed a bill known as S-754 that aims to utilize information sharing to enhance cybersecurity throughout the country. Title 1 of S-754 CISA directs federal agencies to develop procedures to share information about cyber threats with affected private organizations. The law also allows private sector entities to voluntarily share threat information with one another or with the government. Additionally, S-754 authorizes private entities to monitor their online systems for intrusions and permits the use of defensive measures by the organizations to protect themselves from cyber attacks. S-754 requires all entities sharing cyber threat information to remove identifying personal information from such materials. Despite the textual requirements to protect personal information while sharing cyber threat information, it does not do enough to protect private information. Congress was clearly cognizant of these concerns, as S-754 requires the Privacy and the Civil Liberties Oversight Board to compose a report on S-754's impact on privacy and civil liberties every 2 years. Additionally, the head of every federal agency is required to submit detailed reports on issues relating to S-754, including the impact on privacy and civil liberties of the specific persons. S-754 leaves the question of civil liberties largely unchanged and explicitly denies liability for any cause of action generated by sharing cyber threat information under S-754 bill. This permits a potential lawsuit, but only if an organization acts in a grossly negligent manner or willfully engages in misconduct while sharing cyber threat information. According to this bill, private organizations cannot incur liability for refraining from sharing information because the bill reflects a voluntary agreement. Private companies are also protected from antitrust lawsuits when sharing information about cyber threats with one another. Title 2 of this bill, also known as FCEA, requires the Secretary of Homeland Security and Director of OMB to create methods to detect intruders in federal systems. FCEA also requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to create and offer to other federal agencies a program that monitors federal systems network traffic for cyber threats. Heads of federal agencies must utilize this new system within the 6 months following the Secretary's development. On 18th of September 2015, President Obama signed an appropriation bill that includes the version of S754. Although S754 passed into law largely unchanged from its original form, the newly intact Cybersecurity Act contains a clause that allows the government to use and retain share cyber threat information to investigate or prosecute certain crimes. Additionally, the Cyber Act eliminates S754's execution of liability protection for gross negligence or willful misconduct. The Cybersecurity Act also contains sunset provisioning and expires in 2025. On 18 December 2015, then President Barack Obama signed the Public Law 114-113, the Consolidated Appropriation Act of 2016. This includes Federal Cybersecurity Workplace Assessment Act of 2015, also known as CWAA, that addresses the needs of cybersecurity awareness trainings for employees, and the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015, also known as CISA, which ensures that data breaches in future will be reported to the authorities and the affected parties in timely manner. The latest effort to combat cybersecurity threats by the US government was the Executive Order 14028, which aims to improve the cybersecurity by enacting a zero-trust cybersecurity principle across the whole federal sector in US. Now let's talk about the lawsuits that happened because of the OPM case. After the attack, two of the major public employee unions sued the Office of Personnel Management and Keypoint over the cyber security breach in DC district courts. The first lawsuit was filed by the American Federation of Government Employees Union, also known as AFGE, which is the largest government workers union, and another 36 external workers accused that the cybersecurity breach was possible because of the gross negligence of the officials in the OPM. This lawsuit sought for damages under the Little-Tucker Act, the U.S. Privacy Act, and the Administrative Procedure Act. The second lawsuit was filed by the National Treasury Employee Union (NTE), sought damages alleging that the cybersecurity breach violated the constitutional rights to information privacy of the users. The OPM argued that the case should be dismissed because the federal workers did not meet the basic requirements of the code for bringing forth the lawsuits. The DC District Court dismissed both complaints, saying that neither set of plaintiffs has pled sufficient facts to demonstrate that they have standing. The courts wrote in a memorandum opinion that says defendants' motions to dismiss will be granted, and both cases will be dismissed in their entirety. The court finds, applying the case law it is required to follow, that neither set of plaintiffs had pled sufficient facts to demonstrate that they have standing. The courts also wrote that, quoting, plaintiff seeks damages for improper disclosure of information and for a failure to maintain adequate safeguards under the Privacy Act, but they have not alleged that the private information was disclosed as opposed to stolen, and they have not alleged facts to show that their claimed injuries were the results of the agency's failure. Finally, the court states that the plaintiffs have of stand a claim of breach of contract under the Little-Tucker Act, since they have not shown that OPM entered into a contract with them or that any contract was breached, and they have not alleged any violation of the United States Constitution. After the failure in the district courts, The plaintiffs lodged an appeal in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals to reverse the decision of the lower courts. The appeals court argued that there is evidence the hack left federal workers vulnerable to identity theft or fraud. Quoting the appeals court, there is no question that the OPM hackers now have in their possession all the information needed to steal the identities. Plaintiffs have alleged that the hackers stole social security numbers, birth dates, fingerprints, and addresses, among other sensitive personal information. It hardly takes a criminal mastermind to imagine how such information could be used to commit identity theft. The appeals court also criticized the lower court for citing outside reports to conclude that the Chinese government was behind the attack. As an initial matter, the district court should not have relied even in part on its own surmise that the Chinese government perpetrated these attacks. Experts have tied the attack to the Chinese government, alleging it was of espionage, but the appeals court argued that identity theft could be part of an espionage plot. Given that espionage and identity theft are not mutually exclusive, the likely existence of an espionage-related motive hardly renders implausible claim that they face a substantial future risk of identity theft and financial fraud as a result of the breaches. On 8 July 2022, the class action lawsuits were settled when the Office of Personnel Management and Peraton, the mother company of Keypoint, agreed to pay a sum of $63 million to the affected employees. Under the settlement, each claim will be valued at $700 or the actual amount of the claim, whichever is greater, up to a maximum of $10,000. To be eligible to make a claim, the class members' personal information must have been compromised in the data breaches, and they must also have suffered an out-of-pocket expense or loss of compensatable time as following: to purchase a credit monitoring product, credit or identity theft protection product, or other product or service designed to identify or remediate the data breaches, to access, freeze, or unfreeze a credit report with a credit reporting agency. As a result of an identity theft incident or to mitigate an identity theft incident under the terms of the settlement, class members who submit a valid claim by December 23, 2022 can collect the cash payments.